So it's 9/11. I want to make sure we check in with Callie Lichter. She has been following this trial from inside the courthouse since it began. She's now spent over 70 hours in that courthouse. I'm imagining that you might have a little cabin fever staying inside the courthouse there, Callie. We're glad to have you outside reporting live for us. We want to get an idea of the process of reporting this trial. You know, we like to peel the curtain back as much as possible. What has been your perspective through all of this?
Tanner, I just wanted to say thank you for doing that math for me, that it has in fact been 70 hours inside the Kent County Courthouse behind me over the past 2 weeks. And you know, probably more when you factor in the hours that Riley Mack and I were here for jury selection the week before. So yeah, it's definitely been a long time. But as someone who covers crime and court cases for 13 on Your Side, I'm used to being in courthouses very frequently. It's not something that is, you know, out of the ordinary for me, but this has definitely been, you know, an out of the ordinary experience for a lot of people. You know, this is a very high profile trial happening here in Kent County. And so when it comes to reporting, you know, I guess the basic fact that you have to go into is, you know, our job as media members isn't to choose a side. We're not the judge, we're not the jury. You know, we're here to report day in and day out what we see, what we hear. And so, you know, it's a lot of taking notes and making sure that we're hearing, you know, both sides equally and also fairly about what they're saying in that courtroom. So I've had a long running list Google Doc every single day about what's being said, quotes that I'm pulling out, you know, what's kind of the basis of what the prosecution was arguing that day, what's the basis of what the defense was arguing that day, things like that. And I know it looks different for the three reporters who are inside the courthouse every single day. Me, Riley Mack, who was running our fantastic live blog on our website, and Josh Albertus, who's really been, you know, boots on the ground, talking to people outside, people inside, kind of getting that perspective on it. But I've been more focusing on the, you know, proceedings, what's going on, what are the operational things that are happening. And again, you know, it's different than being in court for, let's say, an arraignment or a sentencing of different cases, but a lot of things are the same. So really just, you know, talking to those legal experts and bringing that perspective, that's what I've been doing for the past 8 days plus at this point.
Well, Callie, I am so interested of your perspective inside. I feel like I know the outside of that Kent County Courthouse building so well now. You've been inside. Explain to us what that process has been like. One of the main questions that I have is we were talking about the public having access to the courtroom, being able to line up with doors opening as soon as 6:30 in the morning, but we've also explained it's a very small courtroom. So it's not like they've got a stadium for people to come in and witness this very limited amount of seats. Have you been able to see, is that courtroom full each day? Are you seeing members of the public filing in, wanting to get a view?
Yeah, so our Riley Mack, who I mentioned a little bit earlier, is going to be inside the courtroom when the verdict is read. So every single time people are allowed to file into the courtroom, she goes in. And then, you know, if there is not a verdict or anything that the judge is ruling on, she goes out. But she has been reporting from the 10th floor. Now the media, members of the media, we're on the 5th floor. The courtroom's on the 10th floor of the courthouse. She says that people have been in line. She has brought, you know, things to keep her occupied, as everyone is really just sitting in wait in a corral, basically, with, I don't know the correct word for it, but yeah, it's kind of like a corralled thing. So single file in line. And then again, every time those doors open, they're allowed in. And then if something isn't being ruled on, you know, she comes out. And so that's where a lot of the members of the public who are inside the courthouse for this case have been. You know, you really can only go for this case onto the 10th floor. And when you're actually inside the courtroom, like you guys mentioned, you know, it is not a big courtroom at all. On the 12th floor, you have some pretty decently sized courtrooms, but in this one, it's just, and I know this wouldn't make sense for people who've never been in a courtroom, but it's kind of like an average sized courtroom, I would say. And so there's 3 rows for, you know, the public on each side, but the first row of those 3 rows on either side are reserved for, you know, members of the Loyola family, members of the SCHURR family on the respective sides of the prosecution and then the defense. And then there's 44 seats left for people in the general public. And so that includes, media members like Riley, who are upstairs hoping to get in that courtroom when the verdict is read. And that includes, people from both sides who just want to be in the room where it happens. And when it comes to that, that means there's 4 rows left for 44 people, so there's about 11 people crammed in those rows. And then you have the jury sitting there in the box during the trial, at least, on the left side. And I think when it comes to, people at home, what we're seeing in the media room is exactly what's going on that live stream, just to protect those jurors' identities. They aren't seen, they aren't heard on the stream, keeping them really protected as we go along this trial. And when it comes to the media room, so now we're going 5 floors down on the 5th floor, it's just a lot of people from different outlets, publications, who are all sitting there in anticipation and wait, taking notes. There's also a setup if, Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker wanted to come down and talk, if Defense Attorney Matt Borgula wanted to come down and talk, there's a podium and a space for them. And, there are also law enforcement officers in that room with us, along with a lot on the 10th floor where the actual courtroom is, a lot on the 1st floor where you first enter the courthouse, and that's just to keep everyone safe, everyone contained, making sure nothing really gets out of hand, because you don't know what's going to happen. And like what we saw yesterday with some of the demonstrators out there, emotions are getting heightened as we inch closer and closer to a verdict each day. And so that's kind of my long-winded way of saying that's life inside the courthouse, like Tanner, you said, for the past 70 hours.
Lots of different angles and different factors at play.
Most definitely. And Callie, you had mentioned that you are our crime reporter here at 13 on your side. I wanted to get your opinion. Has court been going as typical as other cases? Have we really stayed on that normal track in terms of how court proceedings go? Or is there anything that has stuck out to you?
Yeah, so, again, like I've been saying, this is a high-profile trial. It hasn't really been anything like this in Kent County for a long time. But when it comes to talking to legal experts, like Tanya Kraus-Phelan, who we've been talking to throughout this whole entire trial, it's going pretty much how everyone anticipated it would go. Not necessarily normal, average, but also not out of the ordinary. This is how it was anticipated to go. You saw kind of a fast moving through defense or through prosecution witnesses, when they were being called for the first half of the trial. And then you kind of saw the pace slow as we got into, especially the last 2 prosecution witnesses, Nick Bloomfield and Seth Stoughton. And then, kind of slowing again once we got into those defense witnesses. Some of them, went pretty fast on that stand, but others, took a long time to examine, cross-examine, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you don't really know what a trial is going to look like. You never know what a court case is going to look like. I'm sure if you asked someone 3 years ago, do you think this is going to be tried in 2025? I'm sure they would say, you're crazy. No one really knows what this is going to look like. You can't put yourself in the heads of the jurors, but they have to deliberate until they come to one of those conclusions. And so it's anticipate. You had witnesses on both sides, exhibits on both sides that almost in a way contradicted each other. And so you have 12 people at this point. There were 2 jurors who were dismissed because they are alternates in case something happens. So you have these 12 jurors who have to go through days and hours of exhibits and witnesses and opinions and try to piece together something for this case. So, we're all hoping we get a verdict today after being here for over a week, but you never know when that verdict will drop.
All right. Well, Callie Lichter reporting live in downtown Grand Rapids. We appreciate your time. You're more than 70 hours in the courtroom there. Callie, thank you so much. And again, we'll check in with you throughout the day. And of course, as we start to learn the outcome of this trial. Callie, again, thank you.